I'm listening to art and I'm going to experience art. And so there's a mindset that you enter into.
I can't imagine anybody's talked about playlist making with this degree of intensity. But it's so good. That's the whole point of this podcast. Welcome to the second episode of No Small Thing. I am Scott.
And I'm Macy.
And this week we're going to be talking about the art of playlist making. We thought we'd call it playlists, and then the art of playlist sounds better.
It doesn't just sound better. I have a lot of reasons why I want it to be art of playlist.
Why did we choose to make this our first topic?
So I feel like it's only fitting that we would do it as our first topic. I also think that it's something that a lot of people can perceive as small, but both of us really see them as big and significant. So I'm glad that we get to talk about it. Also, I like playlists, and so talking about it is really fun to me.
I mean, have you been making playlists for a long time?
Yes and no. Not in the sense of, like, I've been a person who's, like, always made mixtapes their whole life and given them to a lot of people, but music was always very significant in my life, and I had, like, a music sharing, program when I was pretty young. It was called Rhapsody, and it was like you could download anything you wanted, and I loved that. I had basically free reign of music, and my parents never censored my music, which I'm so thankful for. So thank you, Mom and Dad. But a part of that, I would always make playlists that were very dependent on moods. That's how I would make playlists. But
that's going to be interesting if you mention that later.
What do you mean?
You got to unpack that. Moods.
Oh, yeah.
I know what you mean as your friend, but many people I don't think have any idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I think that's where playlist making probably first entered my life, but when we became friends, I started to think of playlists in terms of kind of more like a CD you give to someone, which is, I think, the more traditional sense of maybe a playlist.
Yeah, I thought this would be a good first episode because it represents something that we're both extremely passionate about, and something that I think that we have as lay people. We're not professionals. That's the main thing everybody has to know. We're not professionals, but I do think we have something to offer in this field. Like, it's an example of if we were at a party or we're hanging out with people and we get to talking and the subject turns to playlists, we would have something, I think, significant to offer that people would be interested in.
Yeah, that's
Do you
well
agree?
said. I would agree. That's made me pause and think of who are we to talk about playlists? Yeah, we're not any experts on any level, but I think we are people who, maybe this is just me, but when I think of music, it's art on such an extreme level, and I think playlist making is in itself an art form because you're pulling together pieces of art and making a collection. And so I think maybe we don't have credentials to think about playlists, but we both see it in such a significant and beautiful way that I think we have a lot of thoughts on it. We could talk about it. I hope that if you're someone who likes making playlists or listening to playlists or getting CDs or making CDs, I hope that parts of this are significant to you, but also I think for people who maybe don't make playlists or listen to playlists, maybe this will be something that you start to think about. And I don't know, I would hope that we can be more thoughtful with our music listening. And so I think playlists are a way that we enter into the thoughtfulness of music listening.
Dang, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So what else do you think people can expect?
I think this is so funny because this comedian is not that important to me, although I'm a fan. But we talked about Todd Glass last week, and he talked about his party throwing, and he has a great stand-up bit where he talks about also throwing a party, and this woman comes in, and she's very proud of this appetizer dish that she's brought to the party, and he asks her how she made it, and she says, "I just dumped this creamed corn into a bowl and brought it," and he's very offended about this this lack of love that went into this thing that she brought. And it's I think where I'm wanting to advocate for people to put some time and attention and love into the things that they give their friends and family. And I think we have some great thoughts and guidelines on how to do that.
I feel like you're gonna go about this so probably more analytical.
Probably, yeah,
than
yeah.
I am.
That's good. That'll be a good balance.
It a lot more, I think, in terms of emotion.
Yeah.
Music.
That's good.
Music really evokes something in me. And so playlists, they're really significant.
I think in our modern world, when you think about this idea of like, because you and I have done like sharing playlists over Apple Music or something like that,
right.
And I have playlists published to Spotify, and we have so many platforms to share our playlists, but it seems very, for lack of a better word, like inhumane, or not very personal. And so, like, I would say that type of playlist sharing is like writing someone a sentimental email, which isn't bad. Like, if you got an email from me, it would be like, that's nice. Like, you'd love it. You'd love a nice email that had some encouraging words. But there's a big difference between an email and a handwritten letter. And so I think like a playlist, and maybe we need to be clear with this right off the bat, like advocating for the idea of a playlist like in a CD form, like something you hand somebody that's tangible, tactile, and that you have to be sort of forced to listen to all the way through, is like a handwritten letter.
Wow.
And that's missing these days.
Gosh, that's so, like, I find that to be very true. Like, when I think of a playlist and its significance, I think of the word intimate. And I think that comes from the way that I encounter music and, like, the way I typically, if I'm going to give someone a playlist, if I'm, like, giving them a playlist, each song is a song that I've had an encounter with. And so I already have, like, an intimate relationship to that song, and then I also have a relationship to the person I'm giving the playlist to. So every time, like, every single song is intimate. It's something I have encountered and I want someone else to encounter.
That's so good.
So,
I think about this idea of intimate. Like, I think that just evokes this like desire to connect with people, and so like you could want to connect with a close friend, or if you're going to publish a playlist, I guess that's a way of sharing your heart. Like maybe, but that's not as intimate.
It's not. It's not as intimate. 5 months ago, I made this like mega 12-part playlist series, and it was kind of out for the general public, but there were certain like parts to it, playlists within the 12-part playlist thing. It was very chaotic. There were parts of it where I was thinking of specific people, and like there's one like number 4 out of 12, like it's made like for my parents on some level, and so I don't know. I think you can publicly have intimate moments as well.
Wow. Yeah, so I think that's really good. Like, if this is setting the stage, I think it's important to be clear. Like, I suppose one thing we're wanting to focus on is this idea of a CD mixtape playlist that you make for a specific individual and give to them. But then, obviously, there's all sorts of different forms of playlists and opportunities for playlists. And I love the idea of publishing a playlist for anybody and everybody, but with certain people in mind. Yeah. And maybe those people that know that you had them in mind feel touched by that. What are some of your like experiences up until now with different types of playlists?
My first experience I want to share about is the most recent experience I had with a playlist, which I think kind of reminds me why they matter so much to me, and has reminded me so much why they matter to me. So I have been going through, existential crisis of a lifetime. I'm 23, and now that everybody that I talk to talks about 23 as being a very scary age, and I don't know, it's been scary for me, and I've been having a lot of, questioning a lot of things. And so I received a playlist from one of my best friends, Sydney. She was here last week. And she made me this playlist that she knows me very well and knows kind of what I've been going through, and just that I was in a spot in my life where I was really just doubting hope That's probably the right word. Like doubting in the word hope. And she sent me this playlist, and I was listening to it on a drive. I was driving to Tacoma. I was going to visit my aunt, who I like never see. And I was like, I'm going to drive to Tacoma and do this. And I listened to this playlist, and it's like I'll never forget that drive because of the playlist and the way that music was able to touch my life. And I think that this experience I had with this playlist, the songs on it were they were well like organized in a progression, but there were certain songs that honestly felt like they were songs for my soul.
This was pretty recent, right?
This was pretty recent.
Yeah.
It was like 2 months ago.
Yeah, I remember you playing me portions of that playlist.
One of the songs.
And Sydney is our number one fan, so Sydney.
Yeah, shout
good
out
playlist.
To you. Good playlist. Yeah. And so I think one of those songs specifically that everyone should go listen to, I'm advocating for it, is the song "Secret from the Mad" by Dodie.
We'll put it on our Instagram or something. We're
share
trying to
it.
figure out what we're gonna do.
But I was driving and just like weeping, like crying so much, and just feeling. I think in that moment I was able to have that glimpse of hope again, and so I think that playlists create these. There's a moment in a playlist, if it's done correctly and if it's really thoughtful and you're listening to it and you're ready to listen to it, where you can have like a sacred encounter. That was the word that just kept coming to my mind this week as we were thinking of playlists. I think that they are means of which we can have sacred encounters. I don't even know what that phrase means either. Sacred encounters just
sounds good.
What's been on my mind lately. And I think it's inevitable with music. I think music really draws that out. But yeah, that's a significant experience with the playlist,
So
and why I care. And
I have a
why
question.
I think others should care.
I have a question. What for you do you feel like would be the difference between listening to a playlist that Sydney made you as you're driving, your friend Sydney, as opposed to just a really good album on the way to Tacoma? What would be the difference for you?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think the number one thing is that Sydney or whoever is making me the playlist, they're making it with me in mind. So every song and every word kind of, especially if it is like the playlist she made me was like very significantly touching and I was in a stage of life, but I take the lyrics.
3 weeks ago, stage of life.
Yeah. It's fine. I'm a 4. So I think the fact that it's given to you by someone, and that I'm always assuming that the person who's giving it to you has also shared this song. So I think that's partially why it hits you more. I also think that I can't think of an artist who could make like a more perfect playlist than maybe my best friend who's, doing it out of love. So, yeah.
Doing it out of love is the key, I think. That's what I'm saying about, like, even that Todd Glass thing. Like, there's no love that went into this, dumping this creamed corn into this dish. Like,
yeah.
Like, you got to put some love into these things. I mean, there are so many things in my life that I don't put love into, but I like to think that there's some areas that I do. Yeah. And this is just one of the many areas you can put some. I guess also another just metaphor would be the difference between like buying a card at the store or drawing a card. Making your own card.
Yeah. What's some experiences that you've had with playlists?
I have a similar experience in the sense that like I've always been a huge music fan, and I have a wife that's also a music fan. However, she is not active in her pursuit of new music. So when we first got married, one of the things that really attracted me to Marissa is that she's sort of this perceptively like preppy Bellevue, Washington, whatever that entails, girl who grew up in private Christian schools and stuff, and yet she listened to Led Zeppelin. Like that was like this really cool dichotomy for me. Yeah. So she obviously had good taste in music. She liked U2. She liked Depeche Mode. She liked Led Zeppelin. But once we got married, I realized like that she was sort of stuck in that cycle of music. Like she only listened to those bands. And it wasn't that she wasn't open to listening to new bands. She just didn't have the time and energy or interest to like go out pursuing new music like I do for some reason. So I started making her. Yeah, I started making her playlists, and I think I've made her like 26 playlists now.
Gosh.
And it's we're gonna get into this later, like the art of the playlist, the art of making a playlist. But I think I've learned a lot about that process through making these playlists for Marissa. But it's a lot of this idea of like me wanting to expose her to new music, but ultimately it's become this thing of like, now that I know she loves these playlists and how much they mean to her, like she mostly listens to the playlist exclusively in her car for about 3 months. And she just kind of marinates in it and lets it encourage her. And she says she often thinks of these playlists as soundtracks to her life. And
that's such a good way of putting
it. Yeah. So, I mean, for me in my marriage, it's been intimate. It's been a great way to connect.
Intimate's the right
word.
word.
Yeah. We all need ways to connect with the people we care about and creative ways to connect with the people we care about. Okay, so what I think we should do is go through our tips.
And I think we're going to have a very different approach to this.
/suggestions. And then we can talk more.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's more to say, but like we can't say it until we give our suggestions.
Before we do this, I want us to pause and talk about real quick the fact that I am adamant that we call it the art of playlist making, and I think that leads into the tip part.
Are we calling this tips of the art? Tips of playlist making?
I don't know, but I think we just need to stop really quickly.
We haven't said that yet? The art of playlist making?
We said it, but we haven't. So, okay, the word art means so much to me. And I just think that...
Say it. Talk about it.
I feel like when we were talking about it, at one point you were like, playlist making, and I like felt myself be like, no, it has to be the art of playlist making. Because I said it in the first podcast, and I'm going to say it again because I need to just keep saying it, is that I am trying to own the name artist for myself and what that means. And I don't even know what that means, but I think it just implies freedom. But so the art of playlist making, the word art evokes so much. And I think when we encounter art, it, again, is a divine encounter. And I have to like keep bringing that up, in this idea that when like music itself can give freedom in a like it is in itself an art form. I'm so just like adamant that when we're going about it as this sacred thing and thinking of it as art and a way of expressing. I think for me, when I think of painting or I think of doing something artistic, I think you lose a part of your soul. And this sounds like so crazy, but
you lose?
Like you give a part of your soul.
Oh, yeah.
That's a better word for it. You give a part of your soul, and not in like you never run out of soul, but like you give who you are into the art form. And so I think with playlist making, that happens when you're truly making a playlist, that when you're doing like it as a piece of art. And I think that it should be looked at as a piece of art. And that's why I think when I like listen to a playlist, I partially think I'm listening to art and I'm going to experience art. And so there's a mindset that you enter into.
It's life-giving to give of yourself in a way that feels authentic.
Okay, let's get into tips.
Wait, am I going first?
I think you should go first.
Okay, so my number one tip, suggestion, tool for making a playlist is to tell a story. So when you're making a playlist, think about the beginning, middle, and end, and what you're trying to communicate with your playlist. So telling a story, I think that sounds very confusing, but I think if you can think of something you're wanting to communicate to the person that you're sharing this playlist with, and something that each song is meant to take them on some sort of journey. And honestly, as I'm saying that, the possibilities are infinite.
Yeah.
With the story you could be telling through these songs.
Yeah.
And you could be addressing somebody in your life that's going through a struggle. I think that's maybe possibly what Sydney did with you in your playlist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or somebody that's having some sort of like professional euphoric success in their life, and you're wanting to give them a playlist that celebrates what they're going through. Or you're having somebody that's going through an existential crisis or whatever. Like you can tailor this playlist to take this person on a journey.
Yeah.
And it can tell a story. So that's number one.
It's like a story made for you.
Yeah. A story made for you. You can tell a story through music. Yeah. The second one is know your audience.
Are we just going all the way through 5, or are we going back and forth?
Oh, are we going back and forth?
I think we should go back and
Let's
forth.
do it. Let's go back and forth.
Because,
okay, that's my number one.
Okay, but the reason I want to say that is because it kind of ties to my first one.
Okay.
So the first thing I wrote was theme, and I think that's kind of the same
similar
thing. For me, I feel like theme implies like almost a thesis statement, and I don't think I could like articulate what that like the precise thesis statement for each playlist that I make, but there is something that I want the listener to hear. There's like almost a message per se. And that could be a message that is, evoked mostly through the feeling of the music and the way it like moves up and moves down and things like that. But I think very lyrically. Every song that I put on a playlist, I'm like very cognizant of the lyrics, and certain songs obviously more than others, but I think that plays a huge role in like the theme building. So that's like my first thing is I have to have like a point of view and a direction it's going.
Yeah.
I think both of us are really trying to say that like when you sit down and make a playlist, you're gonna tell something. Mm-hmm. Something is going to be said through this music.
But I think that's the thing we have to mention is that I think a lot of people don't think of it that way. I think a lot of people just think, I'm going to put a bunch of songs on a playlist that I've been listening to that I think you'll like. Here.
Yeah, and I think that both...
And that's how people receive it, too.
That's what I was about to say. I think that is the thing that, if I could encourage anyone out there, too, is if you receive a playlist, to listen to it with this in mind, of like, this is something that someone has put the time and like the order the order matters so much. And I think this probably is a testament to both of the way we encounter like albums by an artist. Some people put shuffle on an album. It is maybe my least favorite thing. If I'm listening to an album, I've played the first song and then it was on shuffle and I didn't know, and the song that was supposed to come next is a different song. It's like number 7 on the album. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was on shuffle, and I freak out.
Because I can't imagine how much time and effort and heart the artist put into getting the song order right.
Yeah.
And I would be so scandalized and frustrated and sad if somebody shuffled my playlist that I made them.
Yeah, and I think this is like I was thinking about this earlier of like 21 Pilots. I'm going to talk about their album. Their most recent album, Blurry Face, I have a lot of mixed emotions about, and we'll get into that.
We're going to do a whole episode.
We'll do a whole episode on 21 Pilots, but...
Maybe just Blurry Face.
No.
Okay. Doesn't deserve it.
It could. Don't get me wrong, but no. But this is a concept album that's kind of like this battle that Tyler, the lead singer, is having with Blurry Face. That's the name of this character that he creates. And there is such a story told throughout the whole album. And so, I think it goes to your tip. Like, this album, I don't love a lot of the songs on it, but I can't help but love that it's telling a story. And, like, by the time it's the last song and the story has been told, it's such a... Gosh, it's a special thing when a story is really told. Then you really encounter that song. And again, it leads you to a sacred... What was my phrase? A sacred encounter.
Sacred encounter.
Sacred encounter.
Gold.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever associated in the history of the world the phrase sacred encounter with a playlist?
I'm sure it's out there.
No. It is not. It is not out there.
That's my thesis for the night.
It's the same. It's the same thing with something like Lemonade, though, which we can all acknowledge is one of the best albums ever made.
Yeah.
You cannot shuffle Lemonade.
Oh.
That's
no.
that's an atrocity.
Really good example.
Yeah.
That's a really good example. So
am I
your
going
tip.
next?
Yeah.
Okay, number 2 for me would be to know your audience.
Oh, yeah.
So, like I said, like these playlists don't happen just arbitrarily. Like my recommendation would that you be making for a specific person or with a specific audience in mind, whether it's a group of people or a person. One of the things I tried not to have happen when I'm making a playlist for Marissa, my wife, is for her to skip a song. And so there's something about me where I am always looking and searching for sort of experimental music, new music, something that's interesting and novel and different. And I like weird things.
Yes.
And I like nice, inspiring, romantic, soft things too, but I also like very weird, strange things and new things, something that sounds different. Marissa doesn't necessarily want that. And so like every once in a while I'll try to sneak something in there that is new or different for Marissa, and she'll say, I always skip song 6. And I'm like, I can't have that. I can't have skip song 6 after all the time and effort that went into this.
Does that hurt a little?
No. Maybe it did in the early days.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, if we're getting really deep, it seems like it would be slightly selfish to have that hurt. Like, this is for her.
True.
This is really, in my mind, it's really, truly for her. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess this is very personal. Side note, and I think I've said this already, one of my favorite authors, Meg Wolitzer, said that every marriage is like its own personal cult. So every marriage has its own set of standards and values and rules and all of that. So maybe some people, a wife or a husband out there would like a playlist from their spouse that does have some X Factor novelty things in it.
X Factor.
Yeah, but Marissa, I have learned, is not looking for that. She's looking for me to go out there and find her something that is going to be very appealing and soothing and encouraging and.
She wouldn't want you to tell like a crazy dark story.
No.
You would just. She just wants to enjoy it. Yeah. That makes sense.
And I we could do a whole episode about me just talking about Marissa's playlist, but because she has, interestingly enough, after all these different playlists, she has grown to expect something.
Yeah.
I'll try to throw in, for example, something like a very emo, quiet, reflective song at the beginning, but she knows the first song is usually supposed to be pretty inspiring and upbeat and set the tone for the album. So she'll deny that or dismiss it right off the bat. She'll be like, this is not my playlist. And I love that because I am trying to make her the playlist that she wants. So when you know your audience, maybe your audience does want something novel. Maybe your audience does want you to actually even push your own boundaries. And maybe your audience wants you to do something crazy out of the box, or maybe your audience just wants to be comforted.
Yeah.
And if you know your audience, you know what to give them. You know what type of genre of music to give them. You know, some people want a very sort of homogenous playlist with a very particular type of genre, or you want something that's gonna, or somebody wants something that's gonna go back and forth between many genres. You just have to know your audience and what they're gonna like, and how far they can be pushed and challenged.
Yeah.
And how far they can't. Wait, so you're next.
I think I'm next with the tip.
Coming in with a tip.
The first and the last song matter a lot. And I think that is something.
Yes.
That when I'm thinking of a playlist, those two, you should have those kind of in mind. And I think that they will help you to tell the story. For me, a playlist, especially in the beginning, you don't want to, in my opinion, you don't want to start out too aggressive. I mean, you could, depending on the audience member. I guess it's true. You have to think of your audience. But I typically think of it as like you're settling in almost to what is to come.
That's the first song?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should have some like idea of where it's going to go, but it's one song, so you can only tell so much in it. But I think it gives the kind of, it should be it's the first note into maybe the genre of the music you're going to be giving, or the first theme, or things like that. So it's telling a lot to the audience member. The last song it's the final note. And so I think on some level should encompass the theme of the whole playlist.
Whoa.
So like individual songs may take the playlist to like a certain maybe area of mood or an area of thought, but they all should be kind of under an umbrella of a thought. And the last song kind of should be clear. It should be, I think. I'd almost like, you're right, like writing a letter. I love this. This is really, that's good. Of like, or even, you know, writing like an essay or a piece of something. Like it has a beginning, it has structure. Yeah, so that's my tip, I guess. The first and the last song really matter.
I'm a believer in this, even if it's not a playlist. Like my favorite group, Beach House, recently came out with an album. And their last song on the album is 7 minutes long. And I was listening to the album at like 1 a.m, and I didn't look at the track list. I didn't look at how long songs would be. I just wanted to experience it. And when it got to the last song, and I just glanced down and realized it was 7 minutes, I just knew intrinsically that they were taking the last song seriously.
I think the last song on an album is incredibly significant.
Yeah.
I think that tells you a lot about the album.
Yeah.
And so I think it's similar. It plays a similar role in a playlist.
I'll just say this as a side note. Really interesting. One of the playlists that Macy made me recently. It took us on a journey. It took us on a journey of ups and downs of faith and social activism and problems in our modern world and race and feminism and all sorts of good topics, especially within the realm of Christianity. And then it ended with the song, "There is Power in the Name of Jesus." And it was a great song. And it's a great ending to that album. And it's interesting to think of that last song with what you said in mind in terms of like framing the entire album.
I know.
Yeah.
It's that playlist.
It's a good one. It's legit. It's legit.
That is probably it's definitely the playlist I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
We're
gonna post these somewhere. We have no idea.
I don't know how to post
We have
some of
multiple
the clips from
social media platforms.
Oh yeah. We're gonna be on Spotify, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
We don't really know about it. We do have an Instagram called No Small Thing, but all right. So was that a second point?
Yeah, that was my second point. Am I gonna talk about the Jesus part?
Not only if you want to.
I just want to say, and maybe you can edit this out, I've thought about that playlist specifically a lot because our views on God are always changing and what that is, the thing that's other. And I said it to you last night. You were like, how funny, the power in the name of Jesus. And I said, I think I see that power differently now. But it holds that same power of like this, it's hope is really the word that I would rather have it be there.
The cosmic Christ.
Yeah, honestly. There's power in the beyond. There's power that we can tap into. And I think that's what I was really like getting at. And I think Jesus or Christianity or God, whatever religion helps us to tap into that power. But so I think that was, now I'm just analyzing my own mix for you, but there was a lot of ups and downs in that mix, and
many. We have to figure out a way to post these.
Yeah, because there was moments in that mix where there was parts that were gross. Would be a word
comical.
To say it. There was comical parts. There's spoken word. There was a lot of different things. So at the end of the day, I wanted there to be like you can put in the midst of all this brokenness. I mean, it was really about brokenness and like how we find healing and how we get beyond that almost.
I think again, it's showing, I think people a bigger vision of what a playlist could be, the art of playlist making, you know?
Yeah. And I think, well, let's go to your next tip.
Oh, okay. Let's get rid of this meaningful, deep stuff and go right to the next tip. Okay, so I have number 3: sneak in, the subtle novelty. I think Macy and I both have a sense of like pushing the boundaries of music. We don't do that personally. We're not musicians, but we like people that are pushing the boundaries of music.
Yeah.
And we have our own journey that we may get into someday about like who represents that for us, like 21 Pilots definitely represents sort of a genre breaking moment for you.
Yeah.
That I think bursted your whatever, your paradigms of music or whatever, and like invited you into something entirely new. I sense honestly like a calling to like nudge people very gently. And that's what I've learned as I've grown older, like very gently, very subtly, very patiently into something different and better. Like I have a speech that I'm always giving my kids about like the music you hear on the radio is rooted in money and what's going to sell the most albums, and it's not rooted in sort of like a personal vision or creativity. And so like there is something that is appropriately and wonderfully and beautifully palatable to most people, like something that really truly speaks to them.
Yeah.
And I think if you're making a mixtape / playlist for someone, it's good to consider those things. It's good to consider what's going to be the most pleasing to this person. But if you can sneak in a novel song that's going to fit within the playlist, that's not going to jar your listener too much, and will interest them or intrigue them enough to like maybe pursue that artist again in the future, that's a huge win. So like as somebody that's like gone sort of into the depths or the deep end of like novel, weird, whatever music, we can pull something that's very palatable out of that heap and put it in this playlist and even situate it in our story or the thing we're trying to say and make it very appealing to the person we're giving the playlist to.
Oh,
so
like
that's my third tip is sneak in the subtle novelty.
And so novelty is probably more specifically like a specific artist.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say a specific artist. I would say like maybe a specific artist, but like maybe there is an artist that you love, that you know your loved one / friend doesn't necessarily gravitate towards. Maybe you can find one song that situated in your playlist will resonate and appeal to the person you're giving this playlist to.
Yeah.
And that can be just a starting point. And also it will add something interesting and different to the playlist you're making. So
I think that's good.
Sneak it in. Sneak it in though.
Sneak.
Yeah.
What do you mean by sneak? Wait.
I think I'm thinking mostly of my wife, Marissa, and I think if you come at this stuff very aggressively and blatantly and obviously, it will be rejected, and skipped. Let's just say that like I'm coming from a place of not wanting a song to be skipped.
Yeah.
So if you put it in the right place and pick the right song, it just may open someone's mind to something new. That's what I'm thinking about.
Wow. Okay. That really goes with my next tip.
Sneak in the subtle novelty.
Sneak in the subtle novelty, which tip, not the word I'm looking for here. Again.
Suggestion?
I don't know.
Guideline?
Thoughts?
Thought.
I think I'm thinking in terms of thoughts.
Top 5 thoughts for making playlists.
I just wrote like introducing someone to an artist, which is basically what you just said. But I think a playlist can be a way in which you introduce someone to an artist. And that to me is something, what I mean like with the hopes of that person wanting to get to know that artist. And I think that there's certain like artists that I want other people to deep dive. And I think it's my desire for other people to do what I do, which is deep dive people. But if there's an artist that's meant a lot to me, or an artist that I think speaks a lot of profound truth, or an artist that I think is just really doing the artist thing of being out there and putting out their soul in music, because that's I think what draws me to artists, is when their soul is their music. And so if there's specific artists in my like repertoire that matter so much to me. And so an artist that I think are, I guess, truth tellers. So I want those to be in there, and with probably the hopes of them being like, who was that? And like the hopes of them maybe wanting to dive a little deeper into that. And I think, almost every playlist I make, I will slip a 21 Pilots song in there, and it's almost like the challenge of how can I artfully put this in there, because I just selfishly, I had such an encounter with 21 Pilots. We got to do that episode soon.
Oh, absolutely.
But so I want others to be able to even just get a glimpse of that. So sneak an artist in, I guess.
Sneak an artist in.
I have the same tip as you.
But you're making like a sub. What do you call it? Guideline, suggestion, tip.
Yeah,
what do we call it?
Thought.
A sub thought, which is a trademark.
Yeah.
What is your trademark? Like my wife Marissa knows that one of my trademark sneaks is a Kanye song.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of Macy's trademark sneaks would be a 21 Pilots.
Yeah,
which she did for me because like in my last album or my last playlist, you snuck one in that was super low key.
Oh, it's fun.
And it's so good. And it's really grown on me.
You didn't love it at first.
I didn't. I glossed over it.
Oh, it bothered me.
Yeah, appropriately so.
Oh, it's probably one of my favorite 21 Pilots songs. So that song means so much to me.
What is it, by the way?
Hometown.
Hometown.
But Sleeper's version.
If anybody's listening that may even know anything about 21 Pilots.
It's Hometown, Sleeper's version. And the Sleeper's version makes a big difference. Do you want to give you another tip? You're pulling out the laptop.
I'm pulling out the laptop. And I think what I might do is like put the real version of this instead of like my computer version, but we're going to listen to this in real time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so I will say my my number 4 thought. My number 4 thought for a good playlist is to have an X factor. Yeah.
X factor. What do you mean by
I have a lot to say about this. Here's what I'm inviting anybody that's listening to this, even if it's just 3 people.
We need to
it's just
assume
Macy.
it's more.
Our 500 listeners.
Patreon supporters.
We're inviting everybody to push the boundaries of what it means to make a playlist.
Yeah.
The art of playlist making.
Yeah.
And I think just in the last year, making playlists for Macy and Marissa and some friends, one of the things that I have personally started to think about is in terms it kind of piggybacks on this idea of telling a story, but it basically is this idea of making your own track. So whether it's a song that you've personally created or pulling a spoken word from YouTube, or even I've thought about doing this. I haven't done it yet. Recording your own poetry into audio file and putting it on an album.
A good idea.
Literally, what if it was just a spoken encouragement to your friend in the middle of the playlist? Like the possibilities are endless, but like putting something on the playlist that really truly personalizes the playlist.
That is so special. I love that idea.
And I like the idea too. One of the things I like in terms of our modern world is like something that you can't find on iTunes, something that you can't find on Spotify. It's just for that person.
Yeah.
That really makes it personal. So this is something I've thought about. It's not merely pulling off a quote or a spoken word, but what I did here, and I did this for Marissa on her recent playlist, was on Marissa's playlist, I pulled a Brene Brown interview from an Oprah special and put some music behind it. So that's the thing that I did that was neat. You can do that in any garage band or whatever. So this is a Peter Rollins, who's a theologian philosopher that I love, and he has some music behind it. I added some music behind it, and this is in the middle of Macy's
added the
playlist.
music?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the thing we should say. Like on Marissa's playlist and Macy's, I don't know if I did this with Bjork at the beginning, but there's some music in the background that I added to just add to the emotional resonance. And maybe we'll take apart this playlist someday, and we'll take apart one of Macy's. But this is sort of leading to the climax. It's setting the tone for the climax.
What a thought.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we'll listen to it, but I'll probably put the actual audio file in it. But we'll just listen to it here.
But then, let's imagine that person is rearrested, and this time they're thrown in prison. And then let's imagine that they go to, say, Narcotics Anonymous or something, if they're a drug taker, and they're sitting there, and they have an experience of deep grace, not cheap grace, but deep grace. this experience is not operating within that structure. There's an actual and there's an ideal, and hey, you didn't live up to it, but we'll give you a second chance, or you didn't really mean it, or whatever. This radical grace suddenly strikes out that entire symbolic system. There is no actual and ideal. You are just who you are. You're accepted for who you are. You don't need to strive by will to get to some place. You don't need to engage your strength and your power to try to overcome something. You just let all of that go. You give up your will, you give up the striving, and you become stationary. And you face yourself. Paul Tillich says grace is the acceptance that you're accepted. So what happens is you experience this radical acceptance that allows you to look at everything you've done and confront it, right? All of your demons and all of your ghosts. Now, interestingly, this is the place where real change can happen. At the very moment that you lay down this striving, that Paul Hessert calls heroicism. The hero is the one who engages their will and gets to somewhere. The moment you give all of that up, and Hessert calls this second move the saint who doesn't move through will to get to somewhere, but who gives all of that up and becomes stationary. This actually existentially is where real change can begin to happen.
That's the end.
It's so fun hearing that again in like this moment.
I do hope that we'll figure out a way to post these playlists. I don't know exactly how we're gonna do it,
Yeah,
but
I don't know because
that's not a Spotify thing.
Yeah, and the one that I most recently made for you has like 5 clips that are all like off YouTube or.
We'll figure it out. If anybody cares to know, if anybody's listening, this Peter Rollins reflection leads into a song called "Be Still" by The Killers. And that's how it goes. That's basically the finale of the album, and then there's some like
it's song 15
after
on the album.
Song 15,
which is interesting because you did a good. There was an emo song right before, it was that I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm in the emotional place.
Yeah.
And then there's like kind of a cool down.
Cool. There's a cool down. That's a perfect way of saying it.
Yeah.
That might be another suggestion or. Thought.
Tip.
Thought.
Oh, yeah, thought. No, I'm saying
just to have a cool down. Bring somebody to a big emotional moment and then have a cool down. Okay, so what's...
This is how
Macy has the next... Yeah. We're talking about the psychology and the...
The psychology of an altar call.
Yeah.
In a playlist.
A safe altar call where you're on your own personal drive to Tacoma and you can opt out of it whenever you want. There's no social pressure.
That is so accurate. Okay. Is it my turn now?
Yeah.
Okay. My fourth thought. You gotta have to go with me on this one. I've been thinking a lot about color and a lot about the way. So I've been like making these paintings, and they've been really a big deal in my life. And there's this like blending of colors, but I'm also like trying to think about contrasting colors. And as I've been thinking about playlist making, I'm seeing how that kind of translates in this idea of when you're making a playlist, the songs and the lyrics and the emotions and the moods, each song, and I think I see the world this way, it's like kind of has its own color. And you want the color that comes next, or the song that comes next, to be, you want it to be a different, but you want it to blend in. But then sometimes you want it to be like a contrasting color, specifically. But it's like these two perfect colors contrasting. This is so out there.
You might have synesthesia. I'm serious.
I don't think so.
How do you know? You don't?
I don't know, but...
Nobody thinks of things like this. But it's great. You should keep going.
Let me try it. I want to try and bring this down back to earth. This is out
Keep going. Keep going out.
Out in space. I love space. There's a reason. You want there to be a flow, and you want some songs to kind of like blend into the next one on some level. But then you also want there to be some dissonance. Is that the right word?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there should be maybe interruptions and I think audience does matter. So like if I'm making a playlist for you or like Ruben, like he or you or both
Ruben,
kind of,
a housemate of Macy.
Yeah, a housemate of mine. He and you both like I'm expecting you guys to be like sitting down and really listening to the playlist.
That's an accurate
assumption.
That's an accurate assumption.
Yeah. And so I like for you guys, I know I can create like the colors that I think of are like this bright orange and then jump to like a teal, like a creamy teal. And like I know that sounds crazy, but
it doesn't sound that crazy. If anybody's listening, it sounds like synesthesia.
What I'm trying to say is that order matters, and there should be a sense of flow. And
but you're thinking of color as sort of a metaphor.
Yeah, the metaphor for it, and I think that you could create like a playlist that's almost like a rainbow that is kind of from one direction to another, and it doesn't have the color eruptions. But I think a good playlist will have a few. It'll maybe okay. This is a way I want to see it. Is there's kind of like a gradient. Now I'm really just thinking about it. You could start a playlist at like yellow and go to red, but then there'll be moments of like blue or green or purple in that, which fit in with like the color next to it, but it's all still going in one direction. I
like that. I mean, that's what I think people say.
Not a tip.
No. Well, we're doing thoughts. We're not doing tips. I think that's what people say about art in general. Like good art does like a combination of smooth and rough, and contrasting feelings. Competing colors and emotions and thoughts, and to not have something that's totally like. Maybe in terms of like telling a story, you want a through line of some kind, but you want something that is well. I think you're naming the journey that has to have some variety of some kind.
Yeah, and I mean, I can even think like specifically to the playlist I made you. There's one part where it's just like dark red, and it's this one pastor talking, and he's talking about women preaching in churches, and he's just like going at it, and it's so ridiculous.
It's dark, but also comical.
Right. It's so ridiculous that it's funny.
Yeah.
Because it sounds so nonsensical that women can't preach. Thoughts.
It's so funny because I basically memorized this sermon, and it somehow has become so parodied in our family. And it's dark, but now I laugh at it. Maybe there's some danger in laughing at it, but like
yeah. But he's basically goes off about woman preachers, and he just talks about Paula Deen at one point, woman being in the
Paula Deen,
woman being in the kitchen. It's dark, and it's followed up with what song is it followed up with?
It's Fiona.
The Fiona album. So that song was a very powerfully dark song, and Fiona is someone,
but an empowering song.
Sorry. That clip is dark. Fiona is equally I would say stronger, more powerful, that song, and I think Fiona is that way. And I think when we get to the Fiona Apple episode, I'll talk about it. But a part of who Fiona is this resilient spirit. And so those two things were so important for me to put next to each other.
What colors would you give those?
Oh gosh, I'm now trying to think of that because it's weird. I almost see them as being both a crimson.
Ooh.
But then Fiona's is like it's like a lit crimson, and like the other one's like dark, and it has shadows in it.
Ooh, yeah, that's good. Like a an on fire crimson something.
I can't believe how much we're talking about color.
Okay, I have one more. Do you have one more, or are you done?
I have one more.
Okay, my last thought. So I'll just go through them one more time. My first one is tell a story. My second one is know your audience. My third one is sneak in subtle novelty. We'll put these on something. I don't know if anybody
in our
cares.
show notes.
Show notes.
I think that's what you put.
Yeah, have an X factor. is my other one, which is what we've been kind of talking about for a while. And then this is the last one I really highly recommend to people. And it's called Test Drive Your Mix.
Oh.
And that means I say drive around with it literally. It's literally test drive. Drive around with it in your car and see how it sounds. And if there's some flubs or some mistakes or some things that don't make sense or some things you'd change, you have time to perfect it. When you test drive a playlist, you take some things out. You realize a few things don't work, and you need to change a few things, and you're refining the product. So maybe you're the type of person that doesn't really want to put that much effort into it, but if you do, I say let's just say you're the type of person that wants to put in some effort. The final step is to test drive, to drive around in the place you live, listening to the playlist yourself, and making sure it works.
I can think of when I'm making other playlists, I'll play it for my housemates. What do you think of this transition? Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, that should be included in this. In the test drive, think about your transitions.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, make sure they work.
Sometimes you want stark transitions.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want it to blend. Again, the color thing.
If you're intentionally shooting for a very provocative transition, then that's great. But if you're not, and it is, and you're wanting something smooth and it isn't smooth, you can make a mental note. That's my
thought.
That's my final thought.
Okay, so my final thought, and I'm glad we're saying thoughts now because it's not a tip, but I guess it's just the word that I kept coming back to when listening to playlists, thinking of playlists, is this idea of nostalgia. So a playlist has so many factors in it. I see music very seasonally, and I think most people probably experience music this way where, you hear a song and you can immediately feel like, oh, I'm at this summertime, this place, this experience, this mindset. And I think when you're making a playlist, you have to have that in mind, that someone is going to have these songs, this experience as a part of what they look back on. Like the fact that a song I put on a playlist could then in 10 years be played and someone's going to be evoked back to that playlist. Like you have to think of that when you're making it, that each song is going to be attached to a memory and a time and a season. And I think when you're thoughtful about it, it's so cool and so profound. I mean, that was the Be Still song was the song of that season. And the Secret from the Mad song that Sydney put in my playlist became the song of the season. So a playlist is going to have a moment, and it's going to have moments. And if you're going to listen to it in your car constantly, it's going to then be associated with certain experiences.
That's so good. And I remember thinking two things that come to mind is my journey with Beach House and reviews that I've read are highlighting the idea that Beach House has been the soundtrack to certain significant moments of someone's life. So now it's been over 10 years, and you can look back and think these songs, this person, this band has soundtracked the most significant experiences of my life. But then there was a member of Tribe Called Quest that died recently. Phife Dawg is the guy that died.
Okay.
Phife Dawg, and when they showed clips from the funeral, they had all some of the biggest hip hop artists talking about this music inspired somebody to pass the bar. This music helped someone to do social justice. This music was the soundtrack to these people doing all these great things. And when you think of Beach House, Tribe Called Quest, playlists, anything else, I think it totally fits. We rely on this music to keep us inspired and motivated, and it's no small thing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think a playlist has there's songs you don't skip, but I also think there's songs of a playlist that become a song, if that makes sense. Okay, I have this concept of a soul song.
Please talk about that. That's a new X factor.
And I usually put a soul song on a playlist. But then I may receive a soul song from a playlist. What do I mean by soul song?
Macy, what do you mean by a soul song?
I mean, so many things.
She asked herself.
Oh gosh. There are certain songs where it seems as if every word and every note and every aspect of it rings true to where you're at. It's really interesting for me to think about how much of a song can. I just think a single song can mean so much to a person, and like you said, carry them through something. And I think it's because, we've said this, it is art. Like, what is art but not freedom? Like, so it's like, it gives you that glimpse of freedom, and it gives you something to put your hope in. Oh gosh, I love music. I'm very thankful for it, is all I can say.
Me too.
And I'm thankful for a playlist. So I also think that making a playlist is kind of, it's a love letter to the concept of music and the power it has. I think it's a testament to the power of music.
Amen. Absolutely.
Snaps
100%.
for playlists.
Snaps for playlists. What did you call a soul song?
Soul song.
I feel like it's another thought, though, or another tip. Like, get a soul song on there.
Get a soul song. Yeah. Yeah. Again, a playlist is a piece of art. So when you're making a piece of art, I feel like there's like within me, there's like an energy or like a power that comes forth. And so like, I haven't made playlists really in a while. And I feel like I needed to have a break almost in order to then have, like, this has inspired me. Now I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to make a playlist.
Gotta make a playlist.
But for me, I know I have to have like something igniting it. And it's usually just this weird creative thing that happens within me. I don't know tips for that, y'all.
But if you're, whatever you are on the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs or Strength Finders, whatever personality type you are, it doesn't matter if you're hyper creative. Like, this is accessible to everybody.
Yeah, everybody knows music.
Yeah.
Well, we probably shouldn't say everybody.
Everybody.
If you're listening to a podcast, you probably know music.
Good point.
Yeah.
Most people have some sort of music they listen to, maybe dabble in the idea of creating a playlist, whatever. You know, you don't have to be super artistic.
No.
But go ahead and be artistic if you are. Go ahead and just go all out. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, for the artists out there, maybe this will be your entry point.
I think that's the end of our...
I think those are our thoughts on playlists.
That's our thoughts on playlists.
The art of playlist
The art
making.
of playlist making. That's it.
Yeah.
Here comes another segment.
Okay. Pause. Wow, I think we have a good episode. Oh.
Okay, hey, now that our playlist, the art of playlist making segment is done, we want to test out several different potential weekly segments.
Yeah, these are kind of like our ideas of what we could do. So again, to our audience, it's so weird saying that, y'all.
Friends and family.
Friends and family, yeah, honestly. We would love like honest feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's another side note of like, maybe this is just me personally, but I like am hoping that we're going to do this for a year. We've said it. And we would love for like it to be something that we can, if you're listening, comment. Oh, we're going to have an Instagram and things like that, but we would love like listener engagement on some level. And so we want your honest feedback. If there's a topic you want us to do, things like that.
100%.
We're just this whole thing is about like freedom and following your curiosity. Okay, so our first segment, we thought of doing recommendations, and we didn't have a clear guideline for each other on this.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the headspace emotionally, I think, when I suggested we do recommendations, that we were going to talk about playlists, and we were going to talk about we're later going to talk about a thought of the week. And my recommendation ties into that on some level. And it's kind of like this song that I want Scott, or I mean, honestly, all of you guys to hear and experience. This song, I think, for myself, it's by an artist, Joanna Newsom, who I've recently really, really, really been like popping off to, loving her, painting to her a lot, just very inspired by her. And so I'm trying to get Scott into her, and trying to get him to like be obsessed with her the way I am, I would say. And I wish the same on everyone, because I think when you encounter Joanna Newsom and you really experience her music and truly experience it, it's one of the most beautiful things. I think she's such a gift. And so I want to share this one song that has meant a lot to me. It's called Time is a Symptom. And it's from her most recent album, Divers, which I think is her most accessible album of all albums. So if anybody wants to listen, this is probably the most, I don't know, what we would consider a normal album. She's very out there in some of her music, not afraid to have a 15-minute song. So she's definitely takes a lot to get into, but I have so much to say on Joanna Newsom.
That'll be a whole episode.
But this song is very special, and I'm going to play it for Scott. And
What's the song called again?
Time is a Symptom.
Time is a Symptom.
And it should be known that this is the concluding song of this album.
The concluding song.
So it has that. I'm going to just play it at this point.
Play it.
I've talked about it enough.
Here we go.
Here we are.
Let Joanna Newsom speak.
Do you want the lyrics?
The moment she saw you, so it would seem to be true. When crew burnt the bases, we forget. When crew dead the bases, we believe the races, all the rest.
Okay, I want you to say the song.
Listening party?
But stand brave life liver, bleeding out your days in the river of time. Stand brave,
Yeah, we're not recording.
time moves both ways.
We're recording.
Oh, we are? We're doing a recommendation segment.
This is so great.
You know we have one more part to record. Have you guys gone on Piggy?
Wow.
Okay, you got it.
Super.
Okay, how are you? Good to see you. Oh, I'm so fucking real. Okay, so this song lost its moment.
I think we're just gonna put it in, you know?
Love is not a symptom of time. Time is just a symptom of love. And all the non-fine
Every time I feel it. deserve her. So are you gonna?
I love those little bird owls.
Oh, I know.
So good. Yeah.
It's so good. Are you gonna now record and give your response? Or are we still on the mics?
We're on the mics.
So
It was a
there's the
beautiful
song.
song.
There's the song.
I really do have to soak in those lyrics and look
Yeah.
at them later, but it was a beautiful song.
I would say for our audience out there, another way to encounter Joanna Newsom, which
Here's
again,
our audience.
Yeah, we have an audience now. There's people in the room. Hi. Hello, Matthew, Lindsay, and Peyton. If you want to also encounter Joanna Newsom and you're into poetry, I would say just to take some of her songs, don't listen to them as music and read them as poetry. That's another way that you can, start to dive into her. Because I am, as I said in the first episode, an evangelical about the things I'm passionate about, and I am passionate about Joanna Newsom. So that's
So
my
good.
recommendation.
Yeah, so good. And Macy had me listen to some Joanna Newsom. Which album did I listen to?
Yeast.
What's it
Yeast.
called? East?
Yeast.
Yeast?
Yeast.
Huh. Yeast. That's good. Yeah, there's certain albums that you need to sit with for like a year because I listened to it one night and I knew I was just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. But I mean, this is all just whether people want to or not. You know, if you want to sit with an album that long and really get into it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited to get into that album. We're doing recommendations?
I guess.
I have a recommendation.
Okay.
My recommendation is a YouTube channel,
Oh, I love it.
and it's called PF/. Capital P, capital F / Dad Reacts.
Wait, is this? Keep going. Have I seen this before?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is a kid that we love. His name is Rory,
Yeah.
and he reacts to modern hip-hop albums, and he's probably like 8 or 9 years old.
Oh, everybody should find this kid.
He's got about 60,000 followers and 69 to be exact, 69,297 subscribers. And I love it for several reasons. One is the pure joy that Rory finds in listening to music, and it's contagious. But second of all, as a parent, I think his dad is doing a very good job of meeting him where he's at. And we all know that kids will listen to music even if their parents aren't allowing them. They'll find ways to listen to the music that they like. And this dad sits with his kid on YouTube and listens to Run the Jewels and listens to all sorts of like music with lots of curse words and all that, and enjoys his son's music and comments on it and makes him feel happy and safe and welcome. And it's such an awesome channel. So if we're doing recommendations, that's my recommendation for the week.
I think there's something about this kid, and it's probably partially just his age, but he has like a freedom when he's just on his video. He's
Contagious
just,
freedom.
Yeah. We're
We all need to
stuck
be.
on that.
We all need to be more like Rory.
Be like Rory.
We're all too self-conscious.
Should we say our thoughts of the week then?
Thoughts of the week.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thought of the week. I've obviously thought a lot about it. The thought came to me.
Do you want to just give a little bit more of a precursor of what this is? Thought of the week. This is a segment.
Yeah, it's a segment.
Potential segment.
But we don't have any true. I don't think we have the same idea of what it is. So
Didn't know about that.
we're still testing it out. Gosh. So my thought of the week.
Okay.
It first came when I was. So I talked about in the beginning of this episode going through a time, existential time. And this podcast and other things have been just, in the past 2 weeks, I would say, I've started to kind of like receive hope again in the world. And with that, I think there's this big imagery of I don't know, almost like a cleansing. I feel like I emotionally and mentally like went through the fire on some level. And I think I kind of do it to myself almost, but it's just who I go through these seasons. And I'm on this up end of it. And this phrase that has been stuck out to me is the only constant is change. And I'm sure I've heard it before, and people may have heard it before, but it's in this moment, in this season of life where I'm just so every day trying to live very presently, and recognize that almost every single night we almost have this cleansing, and every day we wake up and it's easy for me to think that I've also like been making big life decisions and being like, oh, it's going to change the whole trajectory of my world. But this idea of the only constant is change is, well, every single day is a new beginning and a new, like it's always changing. Whether I made some big decision or not, like each day it's its own new thing and anything could happen. It has this idea of unpredictability, and we're always changing and transforming. So that's been the thought of the week, and I've just been like really reflecting on that. There's my thought of the week. So I don't know if that means like, hey,
that's a high thing to live up to. That's a big thought. People are gonna expect a big thought next week.
Please have a silly thought, honestly.
Yeah, you can take it down a notch next week. Colors of thoughts.
Colors.
This is a big. What color would you give that thought?
Oh, I think this thought is. I would, if I'm being honest, I immediately think of it as a myriad of colors, and that's
Don't be honest. Don't be honest.
That's part
Stop
of it.
being honest.
Is
All the colors.
all the colors, and
That's deep.
but it's this. They're fluid. The colors are fluid. Yeah.
It's good.
Gosh.
It's good. The only constant is change.
The only constant is change.
It's the thought
And
of the week.
Shout
from
out.
Maisie.
I think it was Sydney who said that to me. We were just walking one night.
She had a Coke and you had a Red Bull, and you were talking about philosophy, and
And
somebody
we wrote
said
a poem.
you wrote a poem, and somebody said the only constant is change. It's the thought of the week.
All right, what's yours?
I don't know. Like, I it's gonna be interesting to think of, like, is it an original thought? I think I like to think the thought of the week is an original thought, but mine isn't.
Oh.
Mine is from something I'm reading.
You'd like to think it is, but then it's not.
Maybe it's both.
Okay.
Something you're reading, an original thought. I'm reading a book called The Self-Driven Child, as Macy highlighted in last week's episode. I'm a parent, so I read books about parenting, and the concept in this book is that agency is the key to everything. So if your son or daughter feels like they have agency over their life, that they get to make the decisions for themselves, even at a very young age, that is the key to their success. And so I think that's important for me as a parent to, as much as humanly possible, help my kids sense a sense of agency over the decisions they make in their life. But I also think it's a meditation for all of us to understand that if we have agency over our life, that's when we're going to thrive the most. So when we're not making decisions to please other people or to sort of fit into a box, whether it's academia or society or anything, if it's us doing us, so to speak, that's when you're going to experience the most passion and thriving. And I think that's not just like, quote unquote, a thought. I mean, that's rooted in science. It's not just like a romantic thought. It's true. It's a true statement. So that's something I'm trying to think about as a dad, but it's really messed with me in terms of my own life. Like, to think about, like, who am I trying to appease, whether it's a group of people, whether it's a church, whether it's a concept of God that I had in my life, or if it's just me taking ownership of the decisions I make. And that's what we should all do. That's my thought of the week.
Snaps for your thought of the week? That was so good. I feel like I get super blessed by like getting to see you most days, because you're always reading a book and always sharing about what you're learning. And so you reading The Self-Driven Child has really made me think
So
about
good.
my own childhood and how I was raised and things like that. But yeah,
Self-driven
gosh.
child, you know what it also says is agency. The most important thing we can all be doing for ourselves is getting sleep.
Yeah.
Everybody go to sleep.
Everyone
Go to bed.
right now. Yeah, no, and I think that just like emphasizes why we're here, why we're doing this thing.
Yeah.
Is we're really trying to just own ourselves.
Well, own it. We gotta
So
own it.
here we are, everyone.
All right. Well, that was 2 segments. What was our last segment? Oh, we're gonna try our taglines.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to do that?
Oh gosh, yeah.
I think we can save that for next week.
Okay, yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too.
Yeah.
But should we have like, welcome to No Small Thing? You could use that clip. I have chaotic energy.
No. We did it. We did our opening
Oh,
already.
okay, cool.
This-
Yeah, so those were our segments. Let us know what you think of them. Let us know if you liked them, if you were like, y'all are crazy.
2 segments, recommendations, and thoughts of the week.
And if you have an idea for a segment, throw it our way, I guess.
All right.
Cool.
That's it.
Bye.